G'day there, cobbers and cobbettes. It's old mate I read Reddit, back at it again with some more nuclear revenge shenanigans. Now, before we throw this shrimp on the barbie, you gotta do me a solid and capture that subscribe button, just like Steve Owen captured our hearts each and every day. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride, fellas and Sheilas. I hope you love these ones. This story was told to me by my friend's dad. He's a personal trainer and was training this guy in the gym who just got out of prison a couple months prior, and told him this story. It spread through the prison like a wildfire about this man who got what was coming to him. A man was convicted for raping and killing two girls, a 5-year-old girl and a 9-year-old girl. He mutilated their bodies and traces of semen were found inside them. This was the worst of the worst, and other prisoners found this out within the first week of him arriving. The man was only serving life, but didn't get the death penalty. This angered the other prisoners, who decided to take revenge. The prisoners started taking broomsticks from the janitor's closet, and after collecting a few, they went into his cell at night. No one knew how the doors opened, but it was said prisoners had connections with the guards. When the doors opened, the prisoners went into the guy's room, gagged him, and tied him up, then proceeded to do away with 14 broomsticks inside of him, violently and forcefully. The body was found in the morning, bound and gagged. It was said that he bled out over a period of hours. A gruesome and painful death for someone who deserved it. Oh my god. Am I the asshole? When I was much younger, I was taken advantage of by a few different people on different occasions. One almost broke my spirit, but I got my revenge in the end. Being little and in the 4th grade, there wasn't much I could do physically, but I'd bided my time. After being held out of school by my grandfather, who told me to put on a dress that was much too small and wanted me to sit on his lap. I did neither, but a degree of being taken advantage of occurred anyway. I felt dirty, degraded, but most of all I was ticked. I threw myself even farther into my schoolwork and waited. Tick, tick, tick. My father, who worked nights, was asleep in his room before his shift started. My grandfather and I were in the living room watching television. He in his recliner and I on the couch. He started making noises like a puppy was here, hopping on his stomach, forcing the air from his lungs, and vomited into the small trash can next to his chair and then grabbed his chest and looked at me. Confused, I asked if he was okay, and all he could say was, "Oh, oh." I knew from CPR training from the Girl Scouts that he was having a heart attack. I sat on the couch and held eye contact with him, smiling. I waited and waited and waited until he fell unconscious. And it was likely too late for anything to be done before getting my dad and telling him what was happening in the living room. Dad called 911 and the ambulance came to take the old man away, and I was sent to the neighbor's house, while Dad followed the ambulance in his own vehicle. The old pervert died in the hospital, and I had to play the tearful granddaughter at the funeral. I guess I wasn't a very good Girl Scout after all. TLDR, grandfather took advantage of me as a child, and I waited until a heart attack was too far along for him to be saved before I got help. A preamble. I was married to a very OCD and pragmatic man. For example, for him, a big romantic gesture had been to leave me alone for 24 hours at the hospital right after I had our son, so he could go pay bills and mow the lawn. 20 years later, I do understand he really did express love this way, but that's another story. I was in dire need of physical contacts because he'd never touched me, unless he wanted very bland sex, and also never kissed me. The story is not about him, it's only a preamble. So, I divorce him. Not just for what's above, mind you. I felt alone and unloved in this relationship. I just wrote about it to explain the state of mind I was in when I met this other person, we'll call PS. PS was the total opposite. He was very in tune with his emotions. He was very, very intense, and this will be important later. He really expressed love like I thought I needed. On our first date, the waitress asked how long we'd been together, since he was so into me and touching me. He made me feel amazing. He had a huge house and a rather flashy lifestyle, so I assumed he was really well off. He told me he owned a car wash and phone marketing company. Fast forward a bit, at this point he had been dating for about a year, and he had just asked me and my son to move in with him. I wasn't 100% sure, but he prepared the room for my son nonetheless. As I started spending more time in his house, still keeping my own, I also started to see strange behavior. He'd be up all night, but sleep all day. I also overheard a few phone calls where he was telling people they owed money and needed to pay, but the conversation didn't fit with a car wash or phone marketing business. At some point, he told me he was having money problems. He said huge clients were late in paying and that it was jeopardizing his house payments. So I, stupid me, offered to help. I'm missing a part of this story because it started as me offering help with the house, since we were there a lot. Still had my own house though, but it ended up with me lending him $25,000. I cannot for the life of me remember that progression. The loan was supposed to be for 3 weeks, he said. I'd have it all back in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. That $25,000 came from my retirement savings and son's college money, so I had to pay a fine to access it. It's also money that took me 10 years to put aside. That money was very important to me. During those 3 weeks, I went out to have drinks with my friends and found him on a date with another woman. I saw him French kissing another woman. I said nothing, went to his house, packed up my stuff, and left. So anyway, I thought he'd be an adult and would still reimburse the $25,000 in the end of the 3 weeks. Big mistake. Someone I knew told me he was glad I left and proceeded to tell me about him. He said PS was a junkie, hooked on the GHB, hence why he was so intense and so into his emotions. That also explained his erratic sleep and night patterns. But the final blow was when he told me that PS was also a con man, a specialist in defrauding older people by phone. His so-called phone marketing company. In the beginning, I wasn't sure I believed it, but then bits of what I'd overheard from the last year started to make sense, and I realized it was all true. Back to this later. I tried getting my money back in many different ways, none of which worked. I was at the end of my rope, and since it was in my year post-divorce, and right after the 2008-9 economic crash as well, I was poor as heck. So this is what I did. First, he had given me access to pay bills online, not to his bank accounts, but to his emails, so I was able to investigate all his accounts with the same password. I printed and screenshotted every little bit of information relating to money. I found proof that he was indeed scamming people and found the people he worked with, and even the name of the person at Western Union who had facilitated the money transfer. I found out he was an organized criminal. I also found out he did this between the US and Canada. I started preparing Strike 1. So, for Strike 1, I printed his face and the face of everyone working for and with him in defrauding people and left hundreds of flyers in his neighborhood. I also called the hotline of financial crime prevention in both Canada and the US and gave very specific details and names. Just know that even if he had given me the money, this goes against my core values, and I would have done this the same thing either way. At this point, I was preparing Strike 2 also. Strike 2. I was dumb in lending him money, but I at least did it the right way. I wrote a check, I didn't do cash, I wanted proof just in case. It would turn out to be a great idea. On the check, I had written that it was a loan. Thank you, Judge Judy, for this tip. Since he didn't pay me back, I prepared an invoice and sent it to me from his hacked email. When the time came to do my taxes, I filed the $25,000 as an expense using this invoice. I have many freelancers, I just slid him as one of them. And it passed. Don't ask me how I got his social security number, I can't remember, but I ended up having access to it, so ratted him out to the IRS for hiding income. I found out later, through friends, that the IRS started investigating him for unpaid taxes. I heard that he had to pay 38% on tax on that $25,000, plus pay a 20% fine for not declaring income. At this point I was satisfied. I figured $9,500 in taxes plus $5,000 in fines was 50% of what he owed me. At least he didn't get away with it all. But remember I told you the check I had written on that it was a loan? So I took him to court and we won! He didn't even show up. So he has to reimburse the full $25,000 plus court fees plus what he owes to the IRS. So that's $39,500 that he has to pay for not reimbursing $25,000. To this day, I still haven't seen a cent, but the rest of the story makes it worthwhile. At first I thought the financial crime call I made had no effect. Well, now it's the cherry on top. What I didn't know at the time is that the IRS would team up with the wire fraud division and look at everything that he did. They were not able to catch him on the wire fraud, but and since the house he had did not fit with the money he was declaring, they got him on tax evasion and gave him a certain delay to pay back taxes. I heard it was only 3 months, but I don't know if it's accurate. They got him so good, they ended up freezing his accounts and he lost his house. The bank foreclosed it, and his debt to the IRS is still open. We are not in the US, so we won't go to jail for this, however. But my $25,000 that he did not want to repay ended up costing him over $500,000. And since you cannot go bankrupt for a debt you owe to the government, I'm happy to tell you that at 40 years old, he had to move back in with his parents and ask for welfare, and will probably be paying this back for the rest of his life. The story is not finished, however. I just learned that he now has a job as a concierge in the apartment building of his parents, so I'll be contacting the court to have that money he owes me taken directly from his pay. The thing is, he has no idea I'm the culprit of all this bad fortune, and he recently sent me a message telling me that he misses me, that I was an angel to him, and that he regrets what he did. Well, not me, loser. Not me. Right, guys, hope you enjoyed that nuclear revenge story. Got another one coming up, and tell me in the comments if you like this kind of content. I might do more in the future. Tell me if any of the voices of the characters or anything you like, and yeah, have a good day.